Overwatch? Well, maybe Barrierwatch. And is Sombra coming back into the meta? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Salosa and this is Unit Lost. And this is a very interesting topic because if we look at recent changes to the game, on the PTR, this is, by the way, none of this has gone live yet. So if we look at Zenyatta, right, he was given the ability to discord through barriers. That is obviously an attempt by the devs to circumvent barrier play because they know barrier play is going to come back into Overwatch in a massively strong way. Because right now on live, we've got Reinhardt, but we'll get on to Reinhardt in a second. He is the go-to barrier guy, basically, right? But we're about to go into a brave new world. We've got a Winston whose bubble immediately starts cooldown when he drops the bubble. So that means more Winston bubbles. And we've got Orisa, who, well, has got a 900 HP immediate cooldown starting barrier that she can drop down, which is obviously really powerful, especially when you put all three of those together. Anyway, we must understand the fundamentals of Overwatch before we carry on with this video. Let's talk about Reinhardt. If you look at Reinhardt's barrier, look what it does. It blocks loads of choke points in the game. That is what it is designed to do. This is why Reinhardt is, quote unquote, a very powerful character. He's not OP, he's not powerful really in that sense, but he works with the game the way the game is designed to be played. Overwatch is built around choke points, it's built around frontline attack, it's built around all of that kind of stuff. Reinhardt works very strong in that environment. He blocks the choke effectively in every single example. Like, I'm only showing you Eichenwald and Hanamura here, but there's loads more choke points, and it's not coincidence that Reinhardt can just magically block them with his barrier. That's why he's so powerful. So, if they introduce more barriers into the game, what does that mean? Where the hell are we going with this game? Well, first up, Winston's barrier was a much needed buff because Winston, yeah, he's a good character. Winston's not bad, right? Winston played well, is extremely powerful. The thing is, though, it's never really been fair for Winston players to have to deal with the barrier, right? You put the barrier down in the wrong position, you have to wait for it to get destroyed or wait for the barrier to just dissipate. Good players won't just shoot the barrier when they see it in a bad position. They'll leave it because they know Winston, well, he's kind of been gimped a bit when he doesn't have his barrier. And it makes sense, right? That's good play. Thing is now, though, and this is, like I said, a much needed change, and I'm very happy that they've done this, is they allow Winston to recharge his barrier as soon as he drops it. So all of the footage you're going to see in the background here is me playing Winston on PTR. So you'll notice when I drop my barrier down, it's actually starting to, the cooldown is starting again. So if we just watch this period here as I start to attack the Tracer and then I jump into the point, drop my barrier, there you go. You can see the cooldown has started immediately, which is a huge change. It makes Winston much more enjoyable to play, a much more fluid experience. That is awesome, and that's what we need. This, though, isn't the main driving factor behind this Barrierwatch meta, which I think is going to hit Overwatch. It's Orisa, right? That's the one that's going to cause this. Winston, obviously, is going to help with his buff. It makes him a lot more viable. But do remember, Winston was always really kind of viable. Winston was always a good character. With Orisa, though, we've got this hero that can set up static defensive positions. You've seen the video I made where it was the bongo bunker I spoke about, where she can drop the barrier and drop the bongo, the supercharger inside, and it's a nice little kind of combo, you know, and that's great. But then there was also another video I made, which is practically one of the first videos I made about Orisa, and that was the Orisa and Reinhardt combination. It's really strong. Like, it is really, really strong. And in that video, you see me play on Hanamura in the choke, and I was playing Reinhardt. When my barrier got destroyed, Orisa dropped hers in there, I recharged mine, and we just sort of cycled barriers. And it was this, like, impenetrable barrier defense, which was obviously really strong. Yes, there are ways of playing around this. Dive comps obviously just circumnavigate the shields anyway and get stuck into the backline and all of that stuff. And that's what you need to do against these heavy sort of choke defense barrier builds. But what the hell is going to happen when we've got Winston, when we've got Reinhardt, and when we've got Orisa all together on the same team with barriers everywhere? Well, we do have Barrierwatch, and that's what we're going to get. But is it as bad as everyone seems to think it could be? Or maybe as bad as I've led it on to be in this video so far? Actually, I don't think it is. Now, if we talk about the Zen, buff then nerf. So Zen could chuck his Discord orb through barriers, and this was crazy because it meant suddenly flankers like Genji and Tracer were massively powerful again. It's almost going back to early beta days, or beta days, where we had the, I forget what they called it, but you could have, you didn't have a line of sight with Zen. So Zen's orbs just applied to people until, like, they didn't apply, like, until he decided to change them. So he could discord targets and they just remained on the target. He could put his orb of transcendence, no, it's not orb of transcendence, that's his ultimate transcendence, orb of harmony, that's it, on a friendly Genji and just let him run away, and he could just do Genji things. And also, Genji was quite powerful back in that day. I think they know that that could potentially happen again. That's why they have reined back the Discord buff, because it was a massive buff to Zen. Remember, they also nerfed Ana, but then they sort of went back on most of those nerfs. We would have been in an era of the Zen meta, right? Zen would have been needed because he was so powerful. Anyway, they quickly got rid of that. And that got me thinking, like, what are they doing? Do they have another plan? Have they got some other way of allowing us to play around barriers? Well, you know what? Yeah, they have, and it's called Sombra. It is just called Sombra, and I don't think they're going to make any other changes to the PTR concerning like buffs to characters to make them play around barriers, because they need more information, and they're only going to get that information from live. So just to explain what I've been doing recently, I've been playing on the PTR, and I've been playing like Winston and like basically just playing normal games, right? Picking characters that fill out the roster and just, you know, going for the game in that respect. Like not just picking heroes because I want to play, you know, Orisa or whatnot. So actually kind of trying on the PTR to just get a taste of how this Barrierwatch meta could potentially play out. And you know what? It is a bit of a different game. It is, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's a different game. But Sombra changes this game in a massive way. Now, Sombra's had a ton of buffs on the PTR, from being able to translocate faster. Well, she can use a translocator more often. Obviously, she still translocates at the same speed. And like a couple of other buffs that she's received. So Sombra is finally getting into a good position. But with the addition of all the barriers, when Sombra EMPs, it's like, oh god, we've got no barriers. And then you die. Like, all of these heroes that have got barriers, so your Reinhardt, your Orisa, and your Winston, they rely on those barriers to stay alive. It is part of their core gameplay. So when it gets taken away, it is massively jarring. It's like, oh god, the barriers are gone, and you typically get killed really, really quick. You'll also notice as well that Reaper is being played in this game. Reaper seems to be getting played quite a bit on PTR. Now, obviously, it's PTR, right? Skill levels are all over the place. Team compositions are generally not the greatest, so it is difficult to sort of, you know, say, oh, one hero is going to come back into the meta and one hero is going to do this, going to do that, especially when it's a hero like Reaper that has, well, never been changed since, well, never. I don't think Reaper's ever been changed. So he's kind of there, you know, he's pretty good against Winston. I mean, it might be just a factor that you see Winston more often on PTR games because Winston's been buffed, so people want to try Winston. But Winston, I think, is in a good place. So yeah, what we're going to have is, I think, as a backbone of a team, we're going to have Orisa and we're going to have Reinhardt. They work very well together, but only on certain maps. Things like King of the Hill, right? I don't think they're particularly too good together, right? Reinhardt's obviously Reinhardt, and he works okay on most maps, or basically on every map. Orisa, maybe a little bit different. I think, though, on like assault maps, especially on defense, Reinhardt and Orisa work great. I think on hybrid maps, they're going to work great again, even on attack and defense. And on payload maps, they're going to work great. King of the Hill, like I said, is it's a bit up in the air. You know, they'll be usable, but will they be as effective? Winston is obviously quite usable in King of the Hill. It's quite usable in the other game modes as well, but it kind of depends what the other team are doing in a way. You know, if they're set up with like a Roadhog and a Reaper, like this team is, I think, at the moment, that's going to be pretty difficult for Winston to do anything, because there's two massively hard counters to Winston on the field there, and they're going to give him a really bad time. So Winston, yeah, it's still kind of like a more situational pick, but whatever. So we look at the Zen nerf, the Zen buff and then the re-nerf, and we look at why Blizzard have done that. And I think it's quite clear, because they want Sombra to be played more. Now, there is a very interesting thought here behind Sombra. Blizzard obviously know what heroes they're going to launch months and months in advance, right? I doubt that they just swap and change heroes around and go, oh, we need this hero now, we need that hero. No, this is all planned out. They know what heroes are going to launch way into next year. And these heroes are probably being worked on in some sort of stage or whatever right now. So they knew that we're going to get Orisa, right? And they knew Orisa would be the next hero after Sombra. When they gave us Sombra, it was clear what Sombra was designed to do, right? She could hack Reinhardt, but it was difficult, right? Very difficult. There was PTR iterations where Sombra could actually hack through the barrier. Now, that didn't last very long, because that was clearly ridiculously powerful, because if Sombra could just run up to somebody like a Reinhardt and hack him through the barrier, it was ridiculously powerful, so that got taken back. Much like the Zen Discord Orb buff, which was recently on the PTR, you know, and that got brought back, probably for the same reasons. But I think that they knew more barriers were coming into the game. And when you look at the way maps are designed, barrier play it's a core fundamental of Overwatch. Like, being there, protecting your team, being the anchor point, because that's what Orisa, you know, and Reinhardt are. They are anchor tanks. It is a core gameplay feature of Overwatch. So how do you play around this? Well, they seem to be changing Sombra in a way to make her more offensive and more sort of anti-barrier. Now, she always was anti-barrier, right? You look at her EMP, you look at a hack, it removes barriers, right? You hack Reinhardt, he's got no barrier. You EMP barriers, they just get exploded. Now, though, it's crazily effective because if you've got a Winston bubble down, an Orisa bunker down, and a Reinhardt barrier in your face, and she EMPs, they are all gone. And I mean, not to mention you can't use abilities, but they are all gone, the barriers, and that is a huge advantage. So we're going to see, I think, going into, well, it's not into the next season, just going into whenever the Orisa patch drops, when choke points are being held, and they're being held strong with Orisa, with Reinhardt, we're just going to see an offensive Sombra blow them open, just absolutely rip them open. And I think that's all Blizzard think we need right now, and it possibly could be true. Of course, the biggest issue with all of this stuff is we need to actually test it. PTR has got a problem where it's virtually impossible to get really good sort of a feel for what's going to happen because team ability and skill and whatever, it's all over the place, right? People want to test new heroes and stuff. Blizzard have been on record and said before, the idea with the PTR is to make sure the patch actually technically works before we put it on live, which is not great. In an ideal world, they would love to be able to collect great data before they put all of this live. What's going to happen is we're probably going to go live with the changes we've got on the PTR now. There may be some little changes coming down the line, but I reckon we're going to get Orisa fairly soon. I mean, they have said that Orisa is going to be in incubation a little bit longer, so we might get a patch before Orisa comes out, sort of preparing us for Orisa. We'll have to see. But I do think we are going to see more barriers, but I do think Sombra players out there, you are going to be a lot more effective. Sombra is just going to be a hell of a lot more effective anyway with all these barriers around, and it's going to be, I don't know, I think it is an exciting time for Overwatch. I think it would have been a little bit ridiculous if Zen's Discord Orb carried on through, and I'm kind of glad that they've nerfed that now, even though at the time I was a little bit like, oh, hang on, that's not too great, but whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Salosa, and this is Unit Lost. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know what you think about this in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time. Toodaloo.